As we left off last week at the end of chapter 4, Matthew tells us that there's a huge multitude that is gathered around Jesus. In fact, I actually took that last line from chapter 4 where he says multitudes from Galilee and the Decapolis and Jerusalem, Judea, beyond the Jordan were following the Lord. In the original it says a multitude from Galilee, and then it uses the word and, the Decapolis, and Jerusalem, and Judea, and beyond the Jordan. We often miss this, and I'm saying this for the benefit of those of y'all who are really in Bible study fellowship and in precepts, because y'all are so faithful studying the Word. Sometimes there's a couple of things that we often miss in studying the Word, and it's very clear in our English translations, especially those of y'all who use the New American Standard. When the Greek uses the word and in between, it means each entity is extremely important. So in this case, in the original it said from Galilee and the Decapolis. And Decapolis means the 10-city area. It means a multitude from Galilee were there. A multitude from the 10-city area was there. A multitude from Judea was there. A multitude from Jerusalem was there. And a multitude from beyond the Jordan was there. There was a multitude of people there, even if they'd only just come from one area. In things where the Greek uses the word, does not use the word, and actually in English we use the comma. For instance, over in Galatians where it says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, and the last one. There's no and in between those. So when you see that in the Scripture, that means that's a package deal. It's all of them. It's just not one of them. You're not looking for someone to portray the fruit of the Spirit and they happen to have love, but they don't have joy. You follow me? Because there's no and. If he had said love and joy and peace, then you could have each, you could show the fruit of the Spirit by each individual one. But when there's no ands in there, it only comes at the end in English, that means it's a package deal. For instance, like when you look at an apple has a peel, it has the meat, it has the seeds, it has that hard little core area. It's got a stem coming out the top, and on that bottom it's got that little stem thing on the bottom. It takes all of that to look like an apple and be an apple. So the fruit of the Spirit in Galatians is it takes all of those to be an apple. But in this case, and there are other things that we've seen throughout our study of the New Testament, where the separation by these ands. And what Matthew is saying here is, even if these folks had just come from one area, it was still a multitude. So this is a multitude of multitudes that are there. And actually, we're going to find out later on that about 5,000 men were there, plus women and children. This is a huge crowd. So Jesus has seen this crowd gather, and he has them sit down on this hillside. And at this point, because we can go to the other Gospels, we know exactly where we are in the timeline of Jesus' ministry. Even though we're only on chapter 5 of Matthew, we are almost 18 months into his 3 and 3 month to 3.5 year ministry. We're almost 18 months into it. Matthew doesn't tell us a lot. And in this series, unlike Mark and Luke and John, where I told you everything that they're missing, I have not been telling you that, but they're missing. Matthew is not telling you a lot because he's been a tax collector up on the Sea of Galilee. He's been doing his job while Jesus was down in Cana, or while Jesus was over another little town, or while Jesus was down in Jerusalem or in Judea area. Matthew's been collecting taxes. And so in chapter 4 last week, we saw where Jesus went by and he picked up Andrew and Peter and said, "Follow me." But Andrew and Peter had met Jesus a year before, if you remember, down at the Jordan River when John was baptizing, because they had been followers of John. Jesus goes a little ways further, probably not even on the same day, and calls for James and John. And James and John had been disciples baptized by John the Baptist, and they knew about Jesus from about a year before. So here we are about 18 months down into the ministry of Jesus, and he turns around and he sees this huge crowd from basically all over the Israel area, and he has them set down on this hill. Now, some of y'all have been to Israel, and they've showed you where this mount area is. Well, back in Jesus' day, according to the Gospel of Mark, there was a little flat edge area about halfway down the slope where he had all the people sitting. And Jesus went to that area, and it was at this point in time that he reaches over and he points out to Peter and calls Peter and says, Peter, come be right here. And he says to Andrew, come be right here. Come sit on this flat area with me. And he selects his 12 apostles just before he gives the Sermon on the Mount. He has selected them. The 12 are sitting around him, all surrounded by the thousands of people who are there who have been following Jesus. When Jesus went and called Andrew and Peter to leave the boat, and James and John to leave the boat, and Matthew, the Levi, the tax collector, to leave his table, he wasn't calling them at that point in time to be apostles. He was calling them to be followers, so they would be part of the crowd. Now he knew, I guarantee you he knew, they would be part of his select 12, but at this point, this is where he selects them and sets them aside. To go to the other Gospels, you'll also see at this point is where Jesus comes to them as he's got them circled, the 12 around them, and he gives them authority to do everything they have seen him do in his 18-month ministry thus far. He gives them authority to cast out demons. He gives them authority to heal the sick. He gives them authority to speak forgiveness to the people. They don't understand it. It is foreign to them. They've never had that power before. They don't understand what he's telling them. In fact, he's fixing to, after this Sermon on the Mount, he's going to send them out on a mission trip. And when he sends them out on a mission trip, they're going to do wonderful. They're going to come back. They're going to come back and say, Lord, even the demons fled from us. And then later on, he's going to send them on another mission trip. And that one is not so successful because they go out with the wrong attitude. They go out with the wrong thought processes in their mind. And that one doesn't go as well. So we're back at the hillside. Thousands are seated around and listening to Jesus, and he's got the 12. Now, because Jesus is speaking to the 12 and to the thousands, this passage belongs to all of us, to you and to me. Now you go to John chapter 14, where Jesus is only speaking to the 12, and you don't see those topics anyplace else except for the 12. That passage belongs to the apostles. When you go into the upper room where the Lord's Supper is being handled, the messages and the authority that the Lord is giving them to go out and do certain things is to the apostles and not a promise to us, because you have to look at who is the recipient of the message. So you say, well, if the apostles were just the recipient of the message in John 14 and 13, why in the world do we have it in our Bible? Because our Bible is an accurate, infallible, inerrant record of all the good and what God has done to bring about us to the place of salvation and what's even going to happen in eternity. But it's also a divine, inerrant, infallible record of all that's bad in the world too. Good and bad. Now, this is really funny because I did this morning in my 8 o'clock class. I said it's really sad because there are some passages of the Bible that are purely evil, and yet God telling us about evil, and yet we try to pull every verse out of the Bible and make it something good, and you just can't do that. In fact, the first 10.5 chapters of Ecclesiastes is how man without a relationship with God thinks about the world. You can't go to Ecclesiastes chapters 1 through 10.5 and say, see, it's in the Bible, that's got to be true, that's the way it is. Because God's telling us how a man without God thinks through the words of Solomon. You say, okay. Another problem that happens, and this is what I did in my 8 o'clock class, we'll pick up the Bible, we'll say, Lord, I need an answer from you right now. And we'll open the Bible and we'll point our finger at a verse. And we'll say, this is God's answer for me today. So I did it in the 8 o'clock class. I opened it up, and I don't even remember what the verse was, but it was something like this. The woman who speaks at this hour is foolishness. And I thought, well, I need to shut down and go home. And I thought, it was so funny. It just, it was a perfect example of how foolish it is to point and click and open your Bible. Because the Bible is a divine record of all that is good and all that is bad also. When you go over in Habakkuk and you say, and there's a theology out there that God cannot look upon sin. And they take it from the Habakkuk passage. And so you go over and look at the greater context of Habakkuk 1:13, where it is, and you see, hey, it's not God speaking and it's not Habakkuk speaking. It's the leaders, the Jewish leaders, who are saying, surely God would not allow those heathen, ungodly Assyrians who are sinners to come and overtake us. God's eyes are too pure to allow that to happen. It's Assyrians talking who are without God. I mean, it's the Jews talking who are without God. And so the truth of the matter is the Lord's sending the Assyrians to take over the northern kingdom in 722 BC. They're on a job for him. Remember, we're going through John. It's a startling passage where John says that Herod was anointed to do what he did, where Pilate was anointed to do what he did. They were set aside for the purpose of fulfilling God's plan. Anointed. Isaiah says Cyrus was anointed, was going to be anointed to let the children of Israel go back after the exile. And the prophecy calls Cyrus by name 150 years before Cyrus is born. The Lord calls him by name. And he says he's anointed. And he was a reprobate in our minds. He was a reprobate. We have to remember God uses the good and the bad for His purposes. The evil and the godly for His purposes. Now, you don't get off that free. You don't get off that free. You going to do something godly, if on the way to do something godly, you do something ungodly, you don't get to do that. You have just really wiped out all the good by those you hurt on the way to get it done. Biggest thing I deal with in helping hands is people who want to help somebody that the resources are not there to help, so they're going to do it their own way in their own time and just go around the church. And they flap their mouth in sin in the process of trying to do something to help somebody. Jesus doesn't let you off the hook. You negate the good, all the good that you did. Well, Jesus has got these 12 sitting around him with the other followers, and we're all recipients of this. So Matthew's writing it down so we can catch a glimpse of this. So he sets them down, and Jesus begins to say to them a list of things we call the Beatitudes or the blessed. By 1983, I probably had $20,000 worth of library books, theological library books, and I had at least 18 books on the Sermon on the Mount. And quite honestly, I have seen the Sermon on the Mount torn apart, especially the Beatitudes, to where we always want to get down to the root of every word. And so we look at every word and we look at everything, and by the time you get to the end of the list, 8 or 9 or 10 weeks down the road after you've studied each one for a week, you don't even really remember what the other was. And you actually have gotten so close to each one of the trees that you can't see the forest that it's standing in. So the Lord opens His mouth and He begins to teach them. He says this, verse 3, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the poor in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who have been persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is in heaven, and heaven is great. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So Jesus has these 12 sitting down, and he's got the other followers. And he just tells them about what it's going to be like and how blessed they are. As followers of Jesus, you're going to have all these blessings. But he says that to them in a paradox. Look at the second one. To mourn. Look at who is blessed. It often helps to put in a chart. See the chart I put there? The poor in spirit will have the kingdom of heaven. That's the blessing. Those who mourn will be comforted. The gentle will inherit the earth. These are paradoxes. They are paradoxes that only true believers of the Lord have. No other believers in any other faith have these paradoxes in their lives. They are going to struggle. He says, you 12, you're going to struggle, and all the rest of these are going to be believers, and including us, are going to struggle. But everybody in here knows what I'm talking about. As a Christian, we have mourned. We have stood at the casket of someone that we have loved, and our heart is breaking in two, and yet at the same time, the paradox is there. We have sweet comfort because we know where they are. You see the paradox? A few weeks ago, I showed you a movie. This room had 358 people in it, in this room. Not one of you left this room without feeling your spirit absolutely crushed and stomped into the ground. You were poor in spirit that day. And yet, because you know the Scripture, you know and you believe in the Lord, you know that what we watched on that movie, those folks will not inherit the kingdom of God, but you will. That's the paradox. So even though you leave out of here horribly crushed in spirit, poor in spirit, you still leave with this comfort that is there, that you, in the end, you get it all. Jesus threw this in. This is a picture, folks. This is a picture of how life is going to be a struggle for these 12 apostles and all the true followers who are sitting around, and it even comes to us. Our life often will be a struggle. And as we saw in that movie, they're planning that the people that are doing what was in that movie are planning on taking over our country by the year 2050, making the White House their religious place of worship. And they are planning it. In fact, it is sad, some of the things that are being said to Christians by this other religious group right now today in our schools and different places, as they have all the freedoms. They have all the ability to do what they want, and if you don't do something, they've got the attorneys coming down on their side because of the legal aspects, but those of us who are Christians, we're trying to be gentle and kind and wonderful and all of that. And we're trying to pray about it. We're trying to form an organization to help us understand and get along. We're trying to form programs to go into the schools and the prisons and all that to help change people's minds. And they, on the other hand, they're filing lawsuits to get it their way. There's something wrong with Christianity. We're not standing up and fighting for our rights. We're actually letting our rights go so that we don't offend them. And you know it. We got to change. But even at that, with all that struggle coming at us, the paradox is, whatever we are, pure and... Look, the gentle never are going to take over the earth. The gentle right now, talking during our day and time, we're not going to take it over. The gentle right now do not control the earth. The gentle are pushed out of the way. It's the evil ones that are presenting trauma to everyone that is taking over the earth. The merciful, we're going to receive mercy. We win in the end. Jesus is saying in a paradox to them, in a picture through these blessedness. The forest says, in looking at the forest instead of individual trees, all of those trees make up the forest, and it shows a picture of it's going to be a struggle for you as a Christian. To be a follower of the Lord, it's going to be a struggle. But at the same time, in every one of those struggles, deep down inside, you understand there's a blessing over there for you. So Jesus then turns and he talks about salt. He just leaves it. After talking about being blessed, he just goes right into the topic of salt. Look at here, verse 11. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has become tasteless, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. Now I need to describe that the salt that loses its taste is a two-edged sword. On one side, you have salt, and I'll just give you an example. All of us have, if you've ever gone to Galveston to eat food, and many times you have run into what I'm fixing to say. Down here on the coast, we take salt and we put rice in it to help absorb the moisture so it doesn't get in salt. You know that, okay? So you go down to Galveston to eat, and we've all gathered the salt that's got rice in it, still a little chunky. It's absorbed moisture. And we try to get it out on our steak or whatever, or our salad. And that salt's carrying this taste that kind of tastes like the Gulf of Mexico. Now, you know what I'm talking about. It has absorbed a taste that should not be the salt taste. And you cannot separate the salt taste from the yuck taste. That's one side of the sword of which Jesus is talking about here. To absorb stuff that your salt, the bite of what salt is supposed to taste like, that when you put it on the salt, you expect it to have a certain taste, a bite to it. But you put it on there and it's carrying another flavor with it. You can't even hardly taste the salt because it's got that other yucky flavor with it. Then on the other hand, you have salt that is really attached to a carrier, something else that it's really attached to. And so after you've used the salt and washed it away and the carrier is left, pretty soon the carrier doesn't have any more salt on it, so it's no good to keep trying to salt. So in both cases, the people in Jesus' day, as you were traveling, you would see piles of salt along the road where they had camped, and the salt was not good any longer, either because it didn't have any salty taste and bite to it left, or because it was contaminated. The two-edged sword. You, 12 apostles, and all of you who are around here, you are the salt of the earth. You must contain and hold on to that original bite, that edge that salt's supposed to have. Don't be diluted down to where you don't add any flavor to anything, and don't be so diluted down that people, when they get hold of you, they get a different flavor. You see the two sides? Because both sides are tasteless. They don't taste like salt. Two issues. So we have to worry, and we have to warn ourselves, and we have to protect ourselves from both problems. He leaves right there and goes to light. Look at there. He's just going to pop right on through these. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. Well, on a city on a hill, let's say you made out let's say if you had a city and it was kind of made out of adobe. Well, that's not the pen I want to use. That one does not come off very well. So let me see if I can get it off here. All right. Let's say you've got a little hill and it's got a little door and it's got a little window. Well, they didn't have screen material back there. then. They didn't make glass to go in these windows. How did they cover it up? They covered it either by wood, which they really didn't do very fine woodworking joints back in those days, or they'd simply hang a cloth over the window. And up in the edge inside the house, about yay high, they would have a brick that was protruding out of the wall, which was to put the lamp. And the lamp would usually look something like this. And it would hold oil inside of it. And a little wick would come out and a little flame would hang right here as it drew oil up. And that would sit up on the little ledge. You put it up there and the whole room is illuminated, and even at night it would flicker through the cracks on the door or through the material. And so when a city was sitting up on a hill, you could see that city with all the little lamps. Just a little bitty lamp, just a little bitty flame would put out enough light that for miles you could see you were coming to a city. You didn't take that lamp and put it down low, because we know what that does. You take a little lamp and you put it down low and it lights up the floor, but you can't see stuff up here. And what's even worse, if you take a basket, a bushel basket or measuring basket of some sort, and put it over it, you hide it or you try to hide it, a little flicker will happen. But the only thing you've really done by burning a lamp underneath the basket is you've wasted the oil that you've purchased. So don't waste the oil that you've purchased of the Lord by putting your light underneath the basket, 12 apostles. Let it shine. Put it up on the edge, on the brick ledge inside of each house. Put it up there where it can shine out to the world so people can see that you belong to who you belong to, and that's the Lord. Then it's interesting, he goes right to the commandments and the law. Now, do not think that I came to abolish the law or the prophets. Stop. Before we go any further, I want you to understand, Jesus did not come to stop any of the Old Testament or the New Testament. Let me give you an example. If Jesus had come to stop all the Old Testament, then we've got a problem. In fact, we have a denomination out there today that says we are not an Old Testament church, we are a New Testament church, therefore we don't study much in the Old Testament. You've been with me long enough to know that there's nothing really new in the New Testament. It's just brought forward from the Old Testament and added to or fulfilled or filled full, in other words. Give you a couple examples. The Old Testament prophet of the book of Joel, which we will get to not very far in the future. We'll be into it next year. Not one passage in the book of Joel has been fulfilled to this day and will not be fulfilled until another event happens in our future. Joel was the very first prophetic book to be written before Isaiah, before Jonah, before Obadiah, before Hosea, before Amos, before Malachi, before Jeremiah. It was the very first book. Not one thing in it has been fulfilled. Now I know that you're thinking about in Acts 2 where it says this is what was spoken of by the prophet Joel. And the problem is you're referring that to what he just said. What Peter said, hey, our men are not drunk, it's only the 9th hour. And he uses that as his intro. He says, hey, now this is what was spoken of by the prophet Joel. Men will dream dreams. He's quoting right out of Joel what's going to happen to Israel and going to happen through the Lord Jesus as we proceed on time. It's an intro to what he's fixing to tell them. But that hadn't been fulfilled yet. Obadiah. Not one single passage of Obadiah has been fulfilled yet. It's still for our future. What's Obadiah about? Well, let me draw our little thing there. We always seem to have it. It's got to show up. There's Sea of Galilee. Here's the Dead Sea. Here's the edge of area there. And down in this area, there's an area we call it Petra. Anybody been to Petra yet? I've been to Petra. It's totally deserted. Absolutely, totally deserted. And the reason why it's deserted is because all those Edomites who were there, deserted it as prophesied in by the way, over in Isaiah and some others. And they moseyed up over here, and they intermarried with some Philistine areas. And now they're in an area over here that we call the Gaza Strip. Follow me? Obadiah is a prophecy to this area of the country that even though it has been deserted and is as if it is dead, it will be repopulated by the same people who left it. In other words, just face it. We can do all the Gaza Strip, Palestinian negotiations we can try to do as America with them. It's not going to work. In the end, what happens is, and it's one of the signs of the coming of the times, the end times, is the inhabitants of the Gaza Strip are going to move back and inhabit the land that belongs to them. That belongs to the people in the Gaza Strip. Not there, down here. It's one of those things I say to you that before the tribulation time happens, Obadiah has to be fulfilled. It's got to happen. Why? Because by the 3.5-year mark, from down in this area, they have to be catching the Israelites who are trying to get out of town because of the beast and everything, and they're catching them and turning them in. They're cousins. These are cousins of the Israelites. These are the sons of Esau. And they're down here. They've re-inhabited this. By the way, we all think about Armageddon when the Lord comes and breaks through the eastern sky and comes down. He's got a King of Kings and Lord of Lords on the side of his vestiture as it goes down his leg. He's riding his white horse. The sword's coming out of his mouth. And he says, "It is finished," or "It is done." Before he says that in the valley of Armageddon up in here, the Scripture tells us he comes over the mountains of Paran and comes in this direction from the east, comes in and destroys the enemies of Israel, their cousins, the Edomites, before they get there on the day of Armageddon. It's just part of the plan, part of the package. So Obadiah has to be fulfilled. So before it can be checked off, it's got to happen. Well, if you say, we're a New Testament church, we don't believe all that old stuff in the Bible and all that Levitical law, which most of that has been fulfilled, by the way, all that stuff over there, we're just going to throw it. We can't throw it away because we got things like this. We got half of Zechariah that can't be thrown away. We've got a quarter of Ezekiel that cannot be thrown away. Actually, probably more than that. It's probably more like half of Ezekiel. We've got lots of Isaiah that cannot be thrown away. We've got lots of Amos that can't be thrown away. We've got lots of Micah that can't be. We've got these passages and Jeremiah. We've got a buku of Jeremiah that cannot be done away. We can't say, okay, because the Lord came on Calvary, this little event that is in the Old Testament, it doesn't mean anything anymore. That's not what Jesus came to do. Jesus came to say, okay, this was in the Old Testament, but I'm telling you, I'm adding to it in the New Testament, and this is the fulfilled part. We're going to add to this, and we're going to make it this. You follow me? He's going to fill it up. He goes on to say here, verse 18. So you understand that's the background. Truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not the smallest letter or stroke shall pass away from the law until all is accomplished. Every single little thing that is supposed to be checked off will be checked off. Every one. Over in Exodus, if you've studied Exodus, the Lord says, when you do this, Israel, I'm going to do this. That is not a wish list on the Lord's part. The Lord knows everything that's going to happen, and He's telling them, when you do this, this is what's going to happen, and it's got to happen and be checked off. You follow me? Okay. Now, I'm a literalist in all of that. I literally believe all of that's going to happen because it's there. I mean, if He can name Cyrus 150 years before Cyrus is even born by name, this is simple. Because his name was Cyrus. Whomever then annuls one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever keeps and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say to you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the scribes and Pharisees, you will not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Kingdom of heaven. In other words, the scribes and Pharisees are the religious teachers of the day who people are looking for to get them into heaven. And he just said, your righteousness has to surpass theirs or you're not going to make it. Because they're not going to make it either. King James says, not one jot or tittle will be done away with. By the way, jot and tittle is not all Hebrew or Greek words. We've got a Latin word in there and some other things. But what it means is not the smallest mark, not the smallest pause will be done away with. Yes, Steve?
Are we still on the mount here?
We're still on the mount. We're going to be on the mount through chapter 7. He's still got his 12. This is for everybody. That means it's for you too, because it's for everybody else. This is not just the 12, but he's saying to them, you're going to struggle, and here's where you're going to struggle. Let your light, be salty, have that bite, let your light shine. And by the way, not one bit of the OT is done away with. In fact, I'm fixing to add to it, and he does. Since he's talking about the law, let's just talk about the law. Look at the next topic, murder. You have heard it said by ancients who were told, you shall not commit murder. Or, in other words, thou shalt not kill. And whoever commits murder shall be liable to the court. Well, that's right out of the Old Testament. But I say to you, you catch it? Old Testament part of the cup. Thou shalt not commit murder. Got it? Now, Jesus says, wait a minute, I'm going to fulfill this or fill it up. I want you to understand there's another part to that. My followers who belong to me are going to go even past that, where you don't kill. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother shall be guilty before the court. What you're thinking about the person that you want to kill. Just the way you think about it is actually committing murder in your mind. We've gone away. The Old Testament was on physical actions. The Lord fills it up and says it's not only physical actions, but it's mental actions also. Whoever says to his brother, you good for nothing, shall be guilty before the Supreme Court. And whoever says, you fool, shall be guilty enough to go to the fiery hell. Therefore, if you are presenting your offering at the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your offering there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and present your offering. Make friends quickly with your opponents at law while you are with him on the way to the court, in other words, so that your opponent may not hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the officer, and you be thrown into prison. Truly, truly, I say to you, not one will come out of there until he has paid up the last cent. In other words, what the Lord is saying is, you've heard it say, do not commit murder, but I'm telling you, don't murder someone's integrity. Don't murder someone's, what should I say? How's the word? Character, that's it. Don't murder someone's character by yanking them into court over something as believers. Don't do that. Because that's just like murdering their character, murdering their integrity. And when you do that, they may be nothing absolutely wrong with their character and integrity, but you have tainted them in the eyes of other people. You've murdered them. Look at the next, adultery. By the way, let's just go back to murder, because we're going to do it with adultery too. There's not one of you in here that hasn't sinned that sin. Not one of you. Not including me. I am not sinless in this. There have been times I have thought things that I should not have thought about someone, where I literally, in my head, murdered them even though I didn't murder them physically. So with that in mind, we can talk about adultery. Now you know where I'm headed. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. So, in the Old Testament, the half glass is adultery. Don't commit adultery. The act of going to bed with somebody that you're not married to and you're a married person. That's what he's talking about. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. Folks, adultery happens in the eyes and in the heart long before it happens in the bed. in Jesus filling it up. You understand? He's taken the Old Testament and He's expanding it for the 12 apostles and for all of those who are believers following them and following the Lord. He's made the line more difficult. He's made the regiment more difficult. He has fulfilled it and brought it up to what He wants it to be, not what Moses allowed it to be. If your right eye makes you stumble, tear it out and throw it from you. Ooh, that's not very good. For it is better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. If your right hand makes you stumble, cut it off and throw it from you, for it's better for you to lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. Now, folks, He's not saying for you to do this in reality. He's saying clean up your act. And He's using the rights of everything, the right eye and the right hand. The right hand was the hand where deals were made in that climate, where you gave your promise, where you made the deal, where you worked a business transaction. If you did not have a right hand, you were defective. And no one would make a deal with you because you no longer had a right hand. That's the way they thought. So in other words, He's saying to you with your right eye and the right hand, pluck it out or what? He's saying, don't allow the thoughts and the lust to get into your life. Correct it. I like to say it like it says over in Proverbs. Whenever you have this problem, men, ponder your feet. That's what men do. That's what we do. You'll see good godly men who a woman comes in and she should have pondered herself in a mirror before she came in. And she didn't. And now the man looks and thinks, oh, she's got gaposis. Look at those feet. I need to clean my toes. Hello, young woman. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm good. Am I clear? I had a deacon once tell me that lust was not the first look, it was the second. And he's right. It's what you choose to do with it after you've seen it. Don't keep gawking at it. Women, look at yourself before you come. If you got gaposis, cover it up. You're causing some man's heart to beat the way it shouldn't beat. It's fun to laugh at stuff like that, but y'all all know what I'm talking about, don't you? You've seen it, hadn't you? Yeah. We have women come into my office all the time, and I'll sit there and I will stare at their eyes because I don't dare look down at their feet or my feet because I have to pass other stuff on the way to my feet. And I will look at them and I'll look in their eyes, and then I will say to them, when I know they're going to come back, I will end it by saying, ma'am, you come in here trying to present yourself as a godly person. And I'm being compassionate, and I'm your friend, and I'm going to help you all I can. But the next time you come in here, you need to present yourself as looking like what you've told me you are. And with your belly showing and that short skirt that nothing's covering, that's not a godly woman. And I have to cover that. And then they go out and I want to go, we got any Lysol in here I can spray myself with? You know, you just feel dirty. Oh, still got adultery going on here. Okay, let's go on to divorce. We're going to talk a little about adultery and divorce too. Verse 35, he's going down the laws. You get this? He's going down the laws. He's told him back here, not one jot and tittle. In fact, we're going to fulfill it up even bigger. We're going to make it harder for you. It was said, whoever sends his wife away, let him give her a certificate of divorce. Now let me explain that again. In the Old Testament, first of all, women did not give men a certificate of divorce because a woman was property in those days. Just face it, okay? That's where it was. In fact, even young girls, that the daddies owned the young girls, and whether you like it or not, they sold their girls as wives. That's just the bottom line what it was. The man who came with a dowry that he would like, that would help make daddy rich, he would give the girl away, and the girl had no choice in the matter. She had to go with the man daddy chose because of the money that was given to daddy for the girl. Thankfully, that got changed over in Corinthians, chapter 15, 12. One of those two. 7, 12, 15. One of those, okay, got changed over in Corinthians. All right, I do know that. To where it says over there that if the girl does not want to go with the man that Daddy has chosen, daddies don't force her to go with him. So it gets changed. The Lord fills it up. Got it? Changes it. All right, certificate of divorce was given by a man to a woman, and that certificate of divorce said to the world that she was pure. She had done absolutely nothing wrong. Now, to a man, having children, a lot of children was what was important. And let's say that wife was not giving him children. He wanted a wife to give him children. He would give her a certificate of divorce to let her go because she had not done anything wrong, but he wanted to take on a different wife so he could have children. Now, there's lots of reasons for doing it. That's just one example. So a man comes along and he sees this woman over here and says, "Aren't you married to so-and-so?" "Oh, no. Here's my certificate." "Well, would you like to be my wife?" It's free and clear. Do it, get it on it, go get it, okay? He can do it. He can marry her. She is pure. Now, if that woman is married to that man, we'll just put him in here and put her little skirt on her, and okay? They're married. And that woman goes over here and has a relationship with a man while she is married to him. That is called adultery. No certificate of divorce was given for adultery. What happened for this is, if this happened and the man found out, the woman and the man were taken to the door of the house, and there they were stoned. There's no certificate of divorce in the Old Testament for adultery. None. Zero. Certificate said, you're pure. You're holy. It's just that I need to go on as a husband and get someone who can give me children, or there's lots of other reasons. You follow me? Jesus fills this up and stretches this a little more. And like murder, there are some in this room who have been down this road, and just like the Lord forgives the murdering of someone's character, He forgives the adultery that's in your life too. Let's follow on down. Here he goes. It says, "But I say to you that everyone," this is Jesus filling it up, "I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife," and he puts an except for the reason of unchastity, makes her commit adultery. You give a divorce decree, and she goes and marries another man, your divorce decree has made her commit adultery with that man. Goes on to say, "And whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery." So he comes back, commits adultery with that woman. Time out. We need to go over the word unchastity. Unchastity is the same word as fornication. Unchastity is this. If a man and a woman are not in the bonds of matrimony, that's what the ring meant, and they have a sexual relationship, and they're not married to anybody, they just have a sexual relationship, that's called fornication or unchastity. If a man comes along, another man comes along, and he marries this woman, he knew that she had committed fornication before or was unchaste, and he marries her, he can't divorce her for that because she already was in a sinful position. Therefore, that is not a reason for the divorce. Don't divorce because she's already committed an adultery thing. Don't do that. Because fornication and adultery are the same act, just in different places, and they're both sinful. You follow me? So there is no biblical reason for divorce. We're going to cover this again in Matthew chapter 19 when we get there. The Lord's going to go through it. He's going to go through it pretty quick, and we'll get there. False vows. Again, you have heard that the ancients were told, "You shall not make a false witness or a false vow, but you shall fulfill your vows to the Lord. But I say to you," he's filling it up here, "make no oath at all, either by heaven for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is the footstool of His feet, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great King. I swear on the city of Jerusalem. I swear by the heavens. I swear by the throne of God." Don't do any of that. "Nor shall you make an oath on your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black." You can't do that. Well, actually, we can today, but it doesn't stay very long. But yet your statements be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything beyond this is evil. Just like murder, and for some of us in here, adultery. But now for all of us in here, we've at some point in time messed up on a false vow. The Jews were masters of false vows. The Jew would come along and say, okay, we're going to sign this deal. We got the signatures down, we signed this deal. Mr. So-and-so, you're going to go over there, you're going to build this, and you're going to do this, 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 and this, 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 and you're going to get it done, and when you're done, I'm going to pay for you. Pay for it. Mr. goes over, he starts building it. This, 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 and this. Uh-oh, code will not allow us to do it this way anymore, so we've got to do it this way. I'll say, so we'll do it up to code here. Now we do this. Uh-oh, this one's a code item too, so we got to do it this way, da-da-da-da. You come back and say, oh, the building's built. Now it's time for you to pay me. The Jews would say, I'm not going to pay you. There's two issues on there that you didn't build it the way I told you to build it. Therefore, I am not liable. It's my building, but I'm not paying you for it. False witness. Splitting hairs. Don't do that. Don't say to people, I will do that, make a bond, and then don't do it. Either it's yes, yes, or no, no, nothing in between. Anything else is evil, and everybody in this room, from the young to the old, we've done that at some point in time in our life. Retribution. But you have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That actually comes out of Exodus chapter 21. He's talking about a pregnant wife who's a wife who's been pregnant, and they come along and they accident somebody hurts the baby. And it was an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth. For instance, I'm going to tell you how bad that was. Back in those days, the law was if you cut off your finger, I can cut off your arm in retaliation. So what the Exodus passage brought it down is, okay, it's no longer a finger and then an arm, it's a finger and a finger. You got it? So that brought it down. Now the Lord's bringing it even more. He's filling it up. And He's saying, if you something happens, don't retaliate at all until you know that it wasn't intentional. If it was intentional, you're going to retaliate, folks. You're going to turn the other cheek and you're going to let them hit you again. If they hit you again, you're going to know it's intentional. But if it was accidental, you're going to go, as a Christian, you're going to go your way. You're not going to try to retaliate. You see what's happening here? So the Lord has taken the old law that actually restricted it from a finger to an arm to just a finger, or to a pregnant woman who dies with the birth of a child to man. That's a great financial loss, by the way, from killing that man's wife when he becomes pregnant. He's taking that away and saying, no, we're going to turn the other cheek and see if he does it again intentionally. All right? Charity. If anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, let him have your coat also. Okay. When we see biblical characters, they've got this cloak thing on. You got this? All right. Underneath that is a shirt. Best way to put a picture in your mind of what it looked like, Dickens' Christmas Carol. The old man's going to go in the dream and he's wearing this nightgown that comes down to, you got it? But it was usually a shorter sleeve thing for this time. Just think of that. That's the shirt. So a man comes along and says, I like your shirt and I want your shirt and you owe me, so I'm going to sue you for your shirt. The Lord says if he wants your shirt, don't let him sue you. Just give him the shirt and give him your outer cloak too. Just give it to him and get on past it. Don't allow them, if somebody comes up and needs something and he wants it, don't allow them to take you to court for it. Just get them away, let them do that, let them have it. Verse 41, whoever forces you to go 1 mile, go 2 miles. Just go on down the road. Give to him who asks of you, and do not turn away from him who wants to borrow from you. In other words, give, and if you've got income, if you've got something that you can help somebody with, when they ask to borrow it, go ahead and give it too. But don't give what you don't have to give. It's not your responsibility to go get something you don't have. But if you have something and you don't need it, and somebody else needs it, of the basics of life, give it to them. Now, I'm not talking about, the Lord's not talking about anything besides just the basics of life here. That's what He's talking about. On enemies, look here, verse 43. You have heard it said, whoever shall love your enemies, love your neighbors, and hate your enemies. shall love your neighbors and hate your enemies. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven, for He causes His sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. Let me explain here what's going on. In the crowd that is around Jesus at this point in time, they're right here on the hill of Capernaum. There's a multitude from Galilee area. There's a multitude from the Decapolis area. There's a multitude from beyond the Jordan area. There's a multitude from Jerusalem, and there's a multitude from Judea. But right here in the middle, there is an area called Samaria. Samaria. Whenever the northern kingdom came in and when the Syrians came in and took out the northern kingdom, they left the poorest of the Jews in this area and inhabited this, and they also sent Gentiles in this area to intermarry with the Jews. These Jews are half-breed Jews, and we're called Samaritans. And I love the way our language works, because how do you remember where it is? The area between Galilee and the area between Judea is some area in the middle. You got it? Okay. It's this reason why it took longer to get from Jerusalem to Galilee in Jesus' day, because you did not go through Samaria. You came out and went around Samaria, because they're our half-breed cousins and relatives, and they're impure, and we don't go through their country. Remember this parable of the Good Samaritan, where the Jew guy walks on the other side of the street? Anybody who is not pure blood Jew, pure blood from the line of Reuben or Simeon or Issachar or Asher or Naphtali, of Joseph, or through Manasseh and Ephraim or Benjamin or Gad, or go through the list. If you're not pure blood through those, you're not our friends, you're our enemies. In other words, the Samaritans never did anything wrong. They never crossed this boundary line, by the way. They didn't come down here. We know that from whenever Jesus went up to the well of Jacob, and the Samaritan woman says, we have heard that there is a temple down in Jerusalem, but we've never been able to go worship there because we're Samaritans. You got that? So the Jews, they never crossed this line. Well, they were enemies, even though the Samaritans were wonderful people, really wonderful. So what Jesus is saying here, he goes on to say, look, he says, love your neighbors, whether they are Jew or Gentile. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? For even the tax collectors do the same. Tax collectors love people who love them. Does anybody love the tax collector here? I got a tax collector in one of my classes. I have to be careful because not many people like him very much. So I have to love him, and you should too. If you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Don't even the Gentiles do the same? The Gentiles greet other Gentiles and love the Gentiles. Jesus says, therefore, you are to be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. In other words, you are to love all people and help all people, whether they, not calling them enemies just because they've got the wrong bloodline. Now, folks, if you need a sword, you're going to have to pick up a sword. He's not talking about that. And by the way, we'll talk about that later on. So next week, we'll pick up, still on the Sermon on the Mount, still on that mountain on the hill of outside of Capernaum. And we start with chapter 6 next week. Lord Jesus, we thank you for this lesson that just touches on all of us, because all of us have been guilty of almost every sin that the Lord's talking about as He tries to fill up and make things tougher for us. But we are so thankful, Lord, that even whenever we sin, you are faithful to forgive us our sin when we lay those sins at your feet. And you allow us to move on in righteousness. Lord, we love you in your Son's name. Amen.